pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I have a roll call, please?
Jason Tron.
Here.
Julie Simpson.
Here.
Robin Cleek. Here. Wes Pullen. Here. Matt Jacobs.
Here.
Sonali Patel.
Here.
Jeff Bard. We're calling him. Correct.
We're calling him. So while we're waiting to call Jeff, I wanted to introduce Dr. Joe Porto, our interim superintendent. Am I on? So he's joining us from Avoca, Wilmette, District 37. And we are really excited to have him. He's going to be working with Dr. Mark Friedman, and the two of them will be here to cover us for the whole year. You might see them some of the times together, and some of the times just one of them will be present. But on important days, such as when the first day of the teacher is coming back or some other things, we will definitely have both of them here. But you can call Wendy, and she has their schedule. And if you have any concerns or anything, they are always available to answer any questions and concerns.
Thanks, Sonali.
Welcome.
Sonali, should we maybe explain to the public why we have two?
Okay.
Just for clarification.
So for clarification purposes, an interim superintendent by TRS rules can only work for 100 days and 100 days or 500 hours.
Correct.
So in 100 days, we didn't think our new superintendent, full-time superintendent search would cover us. So we therefore have both of them concurrently so that we have continuity and complete oversight, and we can get expertise from both of them at the same time. And that way, it wouldn't be one of them, and then we would have to get another one up to speed at the same time. This way, they will split their time, and we'll have complete coverage for the whole of next year.
And they speak as one superintendent. They have the power of a single superintendent for the board. Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
And I had a question. I don't know if it's been decided yet, but is the board going to one of you guys who will relate to the other? And so there's less confusion of us going to multiple people and multiple.
We kind of, we've got a schedule set up that we'll always share with you. So one of us will be here. And we really decided not to do that, that you can just call either one of us. We are not only good friends, but we're also close colleagues. We can keep really good communication.
Okay.
And we didn't want to set up a one-person go-to.
And the email which goes as superintendent@hawthorne73.org goes to both of them.
Okay.
When we email ourselves as a school board and stuff, it'll go to them, both of them. So all emails,
we'll be sharing everything.
We'll be sharing everything. Sure. So
good question.
So that's superintendent@hawthorne73.org.
Yeah, because if you click on the superintendent button to send an email to a superintendent, it'll go to both of them.
Okay.
And do they both have Hawthorne email addresses?
Yes.
now?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, and they both have Hawthorne email addresses. They have the same access, and all our emails, all our
I
information.
got my lanyard today and everything.
Sweet.
I'm very
Excellent.
Yes.
New jewelry.
So he can get into buildings, but we can't.
Fine by me.
Oh.
Fine by me.
The next, any other questions for Dr. Porto? Nope. Okay. No. The next presentation is for BoardDocs by Kristen. And it is, this is the new system that we would have for all our documentation. And this is about.
Kristen?
Awesome. Hi everyone. Kristen Forsberg at BoardDocs. Can you hear me okay still?
Yep.
Is Jeff there, by the way?
Jeff, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so Jeff joined.
Great.
Okay.
We'll keep this to a quick 10 or 15 minutes or less. Just wanted to give you guys a quick overview of the system. BoardDocs has been around since about 2000. In that time, we are the #1 provider for school districts with board software. We have over 3,000 clients, 2,700 of those are school districts, over 120 in Illinois. Some of the benefits that you'll find in the system as we go through is that you'll have a policy tool You'll also have the ability to access meta search. What that enables you to do is search through all of our clients' public-facing information. So you could go in and type in a hot topic on a policy, see what's already been passed by your peers. So what we'll do first is give you guys a quick introduction to the public-facing side. This is going to be similar to what you experience as a board member, though you'll have to log in, which we'll look at next. I have Lake Zurich's site pulled up. You'll see we can customize our photo, your logo. You can also decide what's presented on the home page. So here we could click right into meeting materials for their meeting on June 28th, or perhaps we want to go back further so that we have a meeting where we already have approved minutes, etc. So perhaps we go down to May. We can view the agenda, and you can click through item by item, or you can simply scroll down to the piece you'd like to review. The agenda will always remain on your left with the details on the right. And again, this is everything that is viewed by the public. When you log in as a board member, you would have access to more materials based on the permissions that you have. Also on the Meetings tab, you will be able to view the minutes. This is really going to automate the process for Wendy in terms of gathering the materials. It's going to automatically renumber them, update in real time, and get you access to the latest information. The minutes can also be taken within the system. And you can decide once those are released. So if that's after they're approved by the board, you'll then release them here.
Kristen?
Yep.
Would there be links to the video of our board meetings?
Yes, so they do not video, or if they do video, they haven't integrated it here. You could add the link in, or if you use YouTube or Vimeo, and those are free to upload to, you can integrate there and add the videos and actually enter markers for when that occurred in the agenda and be able to click through that.
Thank you.
And that would simply be a separate button here to the right of the minutes. It would say watch video.
Perfect.
Any other questions right now?
Any questions?
Not right
No.
now.
Okay. So under the policies, you'll see they house their policies here. We can click through individually, or you can simply do a keyword search. Not only will it search through the policy title, but also within that policy. We can go in and find what we're looking for. It's going to be much easier to update your policies in the system. It works like a rich text editor, so like Microsoft Word, and you can update those in real time once they've been approved. Final piece on the public-facing side, the search capability. You can decide whether you're searching through meetings, policies, minutes, if you want to include attachments. If those attachments are PDFs, it will actually search within the attachment as well. And I've chosen a generic word here. I know it'll pop up somewhere, but if you remember what type of computers you purchased, part of a resolution, type that in. It will be easy to go in and dig up. We can preview those items, and you'll notice here the title does not have the word computer in it. It was searching within this document. You can also navigate there, and so that will take me back to the agenda item where that was discussed.
Wow.
So what we'll do next, I'll just give you another quick few minutes on the back end to show you how you log in. It is going to be similar, but with access to more information. But I want to pause. Are there any questions right here?
Any questions? You can go ahead, Kristen.
Okay. board member or staff member, the only difference is that you will have a login. This will give you access to your closed session materials, any materials that have not been made available to the public. And you'll notice here I also have policies featured. You can decide if you want to feature those on your home page. When I click in to my meeting, you'll notice the big difference here is that I see public content, administrative, and executive content. So you can set permissions internally. Perhaps you have staff members, principals that have access to more information than the public but aren't privy to everything the board is, and the executive content could be board. We help you set up those permissions when we come on site. The other piece here is when these materials are being put together, if there is a last minute item that's added or a change, or when you make those updates, you can drag and drop. It'll automatically renumber. She will be the only person who can make changes after it's been published. Or perhaps the superintendent, if you guys have the top level permission. It's easy to go in and update those. On my meeting, you'll also notice here I have the video. I haven't added one here, but I could do this with Vimeo or YouTube, and you could enter where each item occurs, or roughly. On the back end, you will also have active, draft, and retired policies. The nice piece here is that once a new policy has been added or updated, we can go in and add when it was last reviewed, when it next needs to be reviewed, and it will be a rich text editor, so you don't have to go into Word, convert it to a PDF, and do that reformatting.
Kristen, have you ever had any security breaches of the private information that's uploaded to BoardDocs?
We have not, and we're very proud of our security. We are, over the last 2 years, we've had some changes. We're now part of Diligent Corporation. Diligent is the #1 provider of board software to the for-profit world. So they work with organizations like Wells Fargo, Walmart's board. Their reinvestment in our security has been already over $10 million this year in terms of personnel and infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. The final piece that you will have access to as a staff or board member when you log in is going to be the meta search. So I could go in, and the most recent one, people maybe ask about drones, or a couple years back transgender, that you could go in and view the policies that have already been approved by your peers and use that as a template. I'm pulling up agenda items here. If you type in policy, it would pull up those policies. And so we can go in and preview those items here. And again, I typed in Illinois. We do have over 120 clients in Illinois, but 2,700 school districts in the U.S. that you could go in and look into those.
Is question on the search that you just had there, is it just keywords? Can you have complicated searches with wildcards, with compounds, ands, ors, anything like that?
So you can do and or, you can do Boolean operators. You can also, if I were to search, it would do computers, computing. So the search capability is awesome. I'll actually send, when do you have our document? I have an overview of the in-depth searches you can do that you can share with you guys. So that is a quick overview. The other piece I want to emphasize is the service and support. We do have 24/7 support. They're all based in the U.S. You can reach us over the phone 24/7. We come on site for training, as well as offer free ongoing training. If you have a new board member, a new staff member, just have some additional questions, we'll hop on the phone and train you for free. A lot of our support team members and implementation team were former board clerks and secretaries. I actually know one of them. I wish I remember the district, the large district in Illinois that she came from, and actually implemented the system there. So they have a really unique perspective in terms of that support and implementation. Any other questions I can answer for you guys?
Yes. All the stuff that you showed us, that is all part of the light package?
It is. Yeah. Yeah, that's all in the light. The extra features of the Pro are things like an approval tree and agenda items and a goal tracking area. There's also an area where you can, it's called the meeting control panel, where it allows you to enter your motions and automates the minutes even more than they already are on the other side. A lot of people will start with the light and perhaps upgrade later if there's a need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And after approval, right now, the, what do you call it, installation or for us to go live is about September. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we still have a few dates available in August. We have a lot of days available in September. We're also happy to do some remote training in the meantime to expedite that if it's needed.
Okay. Yeah, so Wendy would probably take care of setting that up. Any more questions?
Any other?
I have a question for Dr. Porto. Do you have any experience using something like this?
Yes.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Do you find it efficient, useful, good spend of money?
I was really happy when I heard that you were moving in this direction.
Okay.
Yes. Nothing against what you had.
Well, no, but just in case you were like, complete waste of money. You know?
No. And I'll never be shy.
Okay.
So if
Thank
that was
you.
the case, I would have said something.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we're always happy to connect you guys. There's a lot of other districts. If I have not sent Wendy a list already, I can send you a list of our clients in Illinois, and feel free to reach out to your peers there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Wendy, you have
Well,
any
thank you
questions
guys so much for your time. I'll go ahead and log off here. I'm sure you guys have a lot of other materials to get to, and I'll be in touch with Wendy soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good evening.
You too. All right.
Good investment.
Next topic for presentation and discussion is bond restructuring and financing and tax implications by Elizabeth Hennessy. She's the managing director from Raymond James, and she specializes in public finance. We keep calling her Elizabeth, and I had a reporter ask me, who's this Elizabeth? So I wanted to clarify who Elizabeth was. So,
you know, the Elizabeth.
I've worked with Elizabeth on at least 4 previous issues like this and referendum. She's been a delight to work with.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me tonight. So the goal of tonight is to go over some referendum options of different amounts. And let's just jump right in. So this page shows the outstanding debt service. Starting on the left-hand side of the page, we've got the tax levy year. We now have the final number for 2017 EAV of $1.3 billion. It's up 4.2%, so that's good. We have 0 increases projected, not because we think there's going to be 0 increase. We're just trying to be conservative on that equalized assessed value. The next column is the debt service extension base, which as of 2018 is $665,371. We have CPI estimated in the future at 1.5%, yet 2019 is on track for a 2% increase. Next column, moving to the right, we have the current non-referendum debt service. Then the next column is the current referendum approved debt service. And then the total of those 2 columns. And then the calculation of the tax rate, which as you can see for 2017 is about 0.579. And then that'll creep up to a high of 79.1 and then down finally in 2029 to zero. The next page is just a graphic. The dark blue lines are the referendum debt service payments, and the light blue are the non-referendum. So the district is currently reviewing referendum options for 48.7 million, 52.32 million, and 57.82 million. The district's Series 2009A referendum bonds are callable January 1 of 2019. So as we've discussed in the past, you have a good opportunity to refund those bonds for savings or restructuring. So for each referendum option that we're evaluating, you will see an A option and a B option. The A option is refunding for savings over time. So we're just refunding those Series 2009A bonds and putting them right back in the place they were with the same final maturity, and looking at today's interest rates, what kind of interest cost savings could you get? Option B looks at not only refunding those callable bonds, but refunding some of the non-callable bonds in the years where those payments are growing. And then we're restructuring those and stretching them out about 4 more years to flatten that current debt service increase, and do that in conjunction with the referendum bonds. So over time, this is not going to save interest costs. However, for the taxpayers, it will lower their annual payment. Okay? So those are the two options we're looking at for each referendum option in conjunction with the 2009A refunding. So here are our 3 building scenarios. Option 1 is the updated, adopted EFMP with no library renovation. And you can see the different buildings, construction in the summer of each of these various years. The total for this option 1 is $52.3 million. Option 2 is the updated, adopted EFMP with libraries, all in, for a total cost over those 5 years of $57.8 million. And then option 3 is the updated, adopted EFMP with STEM in the middle schools only, no libraries. Okay. So those are the 3 options I think that you've come to and that we're going to evaluate today in terms of the cost. Okay. So option 1A, if we start on the left-hand side of the page under the pink box, we see the 2019 refunding, and that refers to the refunding of those outstanding prior referendum-approved bonds and putting them back in the place where they were, so we're not extending the maturity at all. The savings are quite strong at total savings of $1.8 million in interest. So that does help lower the payments a little bit, but does not get rid of the increasing debt service payments which were put in place at the time of that referendum many, many years ago. Then we combine that with the 5 different bond issues for the updated, adopted EFMP with no libraries. So we're looking at $13.5 million in 2019, $9.9 million in 2020, $8.8 million in 2021, $10.7 million in 22, and then phase 5 is in 2023. If you recall, we have 5 years after the approval of a referendum to issue all the bonds pursuant to that referendum. The reason we're issuing bonds in each of these years is to deliver the proceeds to the district just in time to complete the projects that summer when school is out, and to reduce the interest costs by not issuing all the debt up front while you still have those outstanding bonds out there. So that's the strategy of issuing the bonds over the next 5 years. As you can see, the total proposed referendum debt service, and I apologize, the numbers are small for those in the audience. It just adds interest-only cost while the other bonds are outstanding, and then the principal starts to amortize on these new bonds after the old bonds are paid off. And if we look at the current referendum debt service tax rate versus the proposed tax rate and the impact on a $350,000 home, the average annual impact is $302, average annual impact. Okay, so I think the graphs help. And for the homeowner, we're focusing on the $350,000 homeowner in these examples, but I have other homes later on. If we look at the bars on the graphic on the top of the page, we see in the numbers in white in the bars the amount that that $350,000 homeowner is paying. And so right now they're paying about $594 on existing debt, going up to $828 and then dropping down to $572 and then paid off in 25. If we add on the proposed refunding, which helps lower the annual payments a little bit, plus the interest on, plus the debt service on the new bonds, which pays interest only until the old bonds are retired, you can see those numbers again in the blue box for the existing debt after refunding, and in the green box for the new payment on the $52.4 million. And if you add those two payments together, you see the total in the gray box on top. So this kind of gives you a visual on that $350,000 home, the old bonds after refunding, plus the new bonds, and the total payment for debt service. So then let's contrast this with option 1B. So if we go back and look under the pink box, this refunding is refunding those bonds that are callable, but also taking portions of the 02 and 04 cabs and stretching those bonds out by 5 years. So over the life of the bonds, there is not savings in terms of total savings, because we're going, for example, from a 10-year mortgage to a 15-year mortgage, okay? We're stretching out debt. There's going to be more interest cost over time. But what that does, it allows us to then, when we phase in our referendum bonds, in this example for the $52 million, create a schedule where the payments are much more level than even the current debt service is. So the average, though, over the life of the bonds is $345 on average. But what that doesn't reflect is what you see on the next page, and that is what this means for the owner of a $350,000 home in the short term, in the, through 2024. So again, we have the average annual payments on the top graph in the blue bar. You can see the max payment is in 2023 at $828. If we go down and look at the graphic of the combined outstanding plus the green bars, which is the new debt service, our maximum payment doesn't go over $628. So this actually lowers the annual payments for the homeowner in those next 6 years. And then we're going out the 20 years in this option as well as the last option, but the average annual payments after the bonds are paid off is a bit higher. Why? Because we're stretching out these current referendum bond payments. So this scenario kind of reacts to some of the comments we've heard over the past several years that the payments are going up in the short term. This gets rid of that increase, if you will, flattens the outstanding bonds, and adds in the $52 million to give you a more flat debt service schedule. Option 2A looks at the same refunding as the A options, refunding for savings, then adding the 5 issues for a total of $57.9 million. This includes libraries and all in. So this option, on average, costs the homeowner of a $350,000 average home $334 on average over the life of the bonds. So, as with the last option A, you can see we are refunding the 09As for savings, but we're keeping that debt structure the same, and the new debt service goes right on top of that. So, with the increased amount, we have a bit higher payment in the highest year in 2023, but then it drops down to $421 after 2024.
Can I ask a question that may seem really simple?
Yeah, please.
Without me doing the math immediately, if we do one of these examples of the stretched out refunding, if somebody says, I'm going to plan on owning my home for 20 more years, are they going to end up paying more over 20 years than if we had the 2024 end to those bonds?
Yes, they will. And that is reflected in the average annual payment. So, for example, option 2A, the average annual payment is $334.
Mm-hmm.
If we go to 3B, which is the stretch out option,
Right.
the average annual payment is $375.
Right. I just want to make sure when I'm including it with the years up until 2024 that it's that is what it looks like in my head. So even though we see the optics of it flattening out without the spikes over time, this actually costs everybody more money.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying that, because that's exactly the point. It's a trade-off. The stretch out costs a bit more interest over time, but it gets rid of those spikes going up in the next 5 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So here's this option 2B. This again is the $57.9 million. The 5 issues. The average annual debt service is a bit higher with a higher amount. And then on page 13, you can see the top is the existing versus the proposed with the stretch out refunding. And you can see the total payment is now $645 at the highest versus without the stretch out $828. But on average over time, you can see those green bars at the end are a bit higher. So that's where you're paying a little more interest a little longer. Option 3A is our $48.7 million, which is the updated adopted plan with STEM in the middle schools only and no libraries. So this, without the stretch out refunding, with the savings refunding, the average annual payment is $280 for that $350,000 home. But again, we have the step-up spike in those first 5 years or so. And here you can see we're now have a maximum of $962 versus $828. Option 3B is the $48.7 million with the stretch out. The average annual payment in this case is $317 on the $350,000 home. So this is that same stretch out refunding. And if we look at the graph, we can see the payment on the home, instead of a maximum of $828, is now a maximum of $623. Get the right bar there, sorry. But you can see that flattening. So I know those are a lot of numbers, so I thought we'd put them all on the same page for the summary. So this summary looks at that average debt payment over the life of the bonds. Again, going to the fact that the stretch out refunding options, the average annual payment is higher. But what this chart doesn't reflect is the lower payments that you're going to have in the next 5 to 6 years. So let me just stop here and see if you have any questions.
Sure.
A little late with this, but just on all of the charts that were just numbers, and you could pick any one of these, you'd get at the end the average impact. But then when you look at the bar charts, the numbers in gray, are those also at the impact of the?
Yes. So
how come they're all so much higher than the average that's on the page before?
So let's look at one of those options. So do you want to look at?
It's the average of the green, just the green. That would be just the average of just the green if you look at
just the green.
Just
it's
the green.
just the green,
That's
Joe.
for the new bonds.
Yeah.
That's just the average of the new. And this gray is blue and green average.
Got it. That's it. Thanks.
Well, that's a good question. If you had it, others probably did too. So thank you. Any other questions? Making sense? So we also have on this page 18 the impacts on not only the $350,000 home, but the $200,000, the $500,000, the $750,000, and the $1 million home market value. And I've got the formula below there.
My question might be more for Abe or somebody who's not here, but if we're phasing our projects out over 5 years, we don't bid them until a few months before they start. What if the bids are way higher than we anticipated and we can't fund them with the bound amount we've taken?
Well, we've added an inflationary factor within the estimate. And are you asking about contingency? How would we handle bids coming in higher than what we were estimating right now? And I think that was one of the 5 bullet points as it relates to why we should maintain cash reserves to use as contingency for something like Sullivan. If we bid it out 3 months from now and it comes back higher, we don't want that burden to be upon taxpayers. It would be our responsibility, and that's why we would want to maintain some cash reserves
to supplement. Okay.
as an insurance policy for
Just
those
checking.
overages. Okay. But while we're at it, can we go back to slide, I believe it was 19, Elizabeth? 17.
Yeah.
So with slide 17, if you look at your 2019, the most expensive option would save the average homeowner net $46 a year in 2019. And the most expensive option would save the homeowner of a $350,000 home $221 a year net difference in 2023. So there'd be net savings relative to doing nothing, which is the graph above, correct?
Correct.
And yes, we're pushing it more further out, but these bonds would be callable and there'd be an opportunity to reduce some of that 10 years out. Could you extrapolate that a little bit for the board members?
Sure, thank you. So the new bonds that we issue, unlike some of your older bonds, would have a call feature on them. So we would have the flexibility to refund them for savings or refund them at the call date for restructuring if there was some other need that came up to the district via referendum or anything else.
And if we came into money, we could pay them down too, right?
Absolutely.
Are you coming into money?
Huh?
Are you coming into money?
I'm looking for a rich uncle.
We've been missing it this whole time.
Or lower interest rates to be able to restructure at that point as well.
Yes, and the fact is that short-term rates are typically lower than long-term rates. So as you come up on that call date, you will have that opportunity, assuming the yield curve stays in its traditional shape where short-term rates are lower than long-term rates. Just like you're coming in right now with the 2009 A and B. Sorry.
Can you shed some light on why the existing bonds have a steep rise at the end here versus our ability to flatten new bonds? Like, why didn't we flatten it out with the old bonds?
So that is a good question, and I was not part of that
I know you
original
weren't.
issue, but given the history and given what a lot of districts who issued bonds in the early 2000s pursuant to referendum, that was when growth was skyrocketing. You had the taxable value going up 10% plus a year. You had new homes coming in and new businesses absorbing the increased taxes. So I think the philosophy then was, not many people imagined the recession in 2007 and thereafter, and thought that growth would continue. And if they kept the payments lower for the people in the district in early 2000, they could have the people coming into the district, either homes or businesses in the next 20 years, help pay for their fair share of the bonds, assuming the pie continued to get bigger in terms of the tax base. Your district was not alone in looking at debt structures like that. Almost all Lake County districts had back-end weighted debt from the early 2000s as they saw those incredible real estate booms, and many have had to restructure debt.
So that was based on the thinking back then that the EAV would continue to grow at that high rate, which would then take care of flattening out that.
Right, that the tax rate would actually stay
flat or go down.
Up.
But it's going up because the EAV is not growing as was expected back in 2000. So now the rate has to go up. Something has to go up to make the payments, either the EAV or the rate.
Okay. And so when you talk about like the calling of bonds and the restructuring, later in time, can we do that with the stretch out bonds or like the standard bonds that we have, or is it only with one?
You would be able to do it with all of the bonds.
Okay, so no matter which format we chose?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So another way I look at this, when we compare A and B, just a different way of looking at it is, you say, what's the net cost for the life of the bond? I mean, if you look at just the number, A seems, it's a smaller number.
Yes.
You're right. That's the average over the entire thing. But the actual impact to the homeowner depends on where you are and when you sell and when you buy. So it's you have to take a look at it as, are you here and then you're going to sell in 7 years or 10 years? That makes a difference. Are you going to buy in 5 years and sell in 20 years? That makes a difference. Are you going to buy in 8 years and beyond? That makes a difference. So the actual impact really depends on where you are in your ownership of the house and when you want to get in and out.
Right.
That's exactly right. And I think a good illustration of that is like if you take any of these B options and you look at that final far right-hand column, you see that owner of that $350,000 home is actually going to have a decline in their debt service tax bill over the next 5 years. So, and some of those numbers are significant. And then, of course, when the new bonds fold in, it's going to be level, but that's what the restructuring plan does.
And what it does is it shifts to perhaps buyers in the future who will then be using the schools. So right now, A has it front-loaded more than B, the current homeowners bearing the brunt. Whereas for B, by having it flattened out like that, everyone's kind of on the same cost to them, regardless of when they buy into the district, right?
That's true.
So A, if you buy in a little bit later, you're using the same resources, but you're paying much less than if B was, because that's got a lot more flatter seems to be spreading the costs more equitably. Is that a good way to look at
Yes.
comparison between A and B?
I would agree with that. The one thing you have to realize, though, is that the cost of the referendum back from 2002 is in there still, too.
Yep.
But those buildings are still going, right?
Yep.
And people are
They're
still
still being used.
using them, for sure.
Any more questions?
Abe, which structure do you like?
Slide.
Oh, yeah,
One more
not
slide.
done yet, sorry.
I'm sorry, there's a question, go ahead.
What structure do you like? And why?
I like framing it to taxpayers that there is no net increase from where we're at from now for the next 5 years. And if anything, it's going to decrease from where we're at now. And I like the ability, the capacity for 10 years from now to have it where we can restructure and the bonds are callable. So I think B option is more palatable if I was a homeowner versus option A, where in 2023, if we look at 2A, we would be looking at $996 additional with the existing plus the new for just the bonds. $1,000 a year for a $350,000 home is less palatable to me versus a $607 amount.
Okay.
Questions? Is there one more slide?
Okay, so the last slide, oh, where'd it go? Maybe we got the wrong one up there.
I'll attempt to project.
I've got it.
Dimitri.
Dimitri, can you turn the AirPlay on and I'll project this last slide?
It's a limiting rate slide.
Yeah, I think it was the actual one.
You guys have it on your presentation?
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Okay, good. Okay, here we go. So,
Yeah,
It's up.
yeah.
great. So this last slide looks at a limiting rate increase. Catching up with Abe and your conversations about the expanded space in the facilities plan, it seems prudent to pay the operational cost of that additional space so the district doesn't get pinched in your operating funds. And the additional cost is estimated to be about $1.3 million a year, which is a 10-cent tax rate increase. So this slide shows the tax increase of 10 cents, generating $1.3 million a year. So you see the cost for that $350 home, $1,000 home is about $111. $61 on the $200,000 home, $161 on the $500,000 home, $244 on the $750,000 home, and $327 on the $1 million market value home. So this 10 cents would be proposed to the voters in a limiting rate increase. It would allow those dollars to be put in the O&M fund or the education fund, but dedicated to paying for the additional operational cost associated with the additional space. So correct me if I'm wrong, Abe, but we're looking at real operations. We're not looking at staff, educational staff, really.
Correct. It's the operational cost referenced in the memo where it's itemized. It's primarily utilities, minimum mandatory costs to operate this additional square footage. So one question to build it, which we were looking at a net decrease from the existing payment, and then a small component to address the minimum mandatory operational needs of what we construct. Knowing that currently we're operating in a deficit model, that surely within that model, as we attempt to find and identify savings, we don't want to take on 145,000 square feet of additional space to maintain and operate. That we'd like to ask the second question.
So if you look at page 17 as an example, we would just, for that bottom graph, you would just add $111 to that bottom graph, and that would be the total impact for both, right? The
Yes.
EFMP as well as the thing.
And if people approve the 1.3 because it looks small and not the big one, then we never pull the 1.3 bonds?
Then we under levy because it's a question that actually increases your limiting rate
Right.
by that percent point.
Okay.
So when we present our tax levy presentation, we may choose as a board, you may choose as a board that we're going to under levy and not
Gotcha.
not leverage that.
But if that question passes and the other one doesn't, we can't build.
Right.
Yeah, we can build.
Our only option is to under levy.
Yes.
Okay.
Any more questions for Elizabeth?
Clarify that question again, Wes. If which passes and the
If
other
the
one doesn't.
$1.3 million ask passes,
Okay.
The
because
limiting
people say
rate.
like, oh, it's a small amount, I'll
Okay.
approve that, but I'm not approving 50, then what?
Doesn't really do us any good. I guess, I want to talk about that, but I guess that's in a
That's
different
a different
topic.
conversation.
It won't solve our space issues.
That'll come
No.
up later. We'll talk
It
about it
definitely
later.
will. Any more questions for Elizabeth?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you,
Elizabeth,
though.
while we have
Thanks,
you
Elizabeth.
there,
Very, very helpful.
You want to ask if Jeff has any questions?
I'll ask him. While we have you here, could you explain, because this is the approval of the working cash,
Yes.
what is the intent for, let me say the right.
The order.
Resolution of intent. Yes.
Resolution for intent for the working cash fund bonds. Could you just quickly kind of outline or summarize
Sure.
it for us so that, when I go to the action item, I don't have to do it?
Sure, sure. And I'll be happy to say and do that again, too. So tonight, the board is considering the resolution of intent to issue 1.5 million working cash fund bonds. These are non-referendum bonds paid from that debt service extension base. You also have a refunding opportunity on the Series 2009B bonds to refund those at the same time. So you would be saving money from that and then issuing the 1.5 million. Because this all has to fit in your debt service extension base, this is basically an extension of the dollars that you have been levying. We're not even going out 1 year further than your current final maturity, and we're getting an extra 1.5 million. We are going to take advantage of CPI, which affects that debt service extension base, so it'll go up very slightly at about 2% in the next several years and then 1.5% thereafter. But this fits within your current parameters and allows you to use those funds for additional capital projects.
And this was one of the questions that had kind of come up before, and and you could eloquently explain this, is, doing this working cash refund, how does it affect a homeowner? Like, how would that affect them at their bottom line?
It really won't affect them at all because we're saving money, and in fact, we're saving about $213,000 over the life of the bonds, but then we're issuing new bonds for $1.5 million. So they really won't feel anything on their tax bill, maybe a minor increase of a penny over the 10-year life of the bonds. So that's it, maybe a penny on the tax rate, which for a $350,000 home might be $12 on average. So it's simply the increase of the CPI over time.
I just wanted to clarify that because you'd be better explain that than I would be.
Good question.
Yes. So anybody else have any questions regarding that working cash bond for Elizabeth?
So there's no real downside to doing it.
No.
We're not incurring any kind of penalty by
No
selling it.
penalty. It's just reissuing of that debt service extension base.
Okay.
I think in prior meetings, we looked at options that went out further than 10 years, but the board kind of conservatively said 10 years, which is the current final maturity of your existing bonds, is all you were willing to go. So at today's interest rates, that does get you about 1.5 million.
Okay.
Jeff, any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you,
Good
Elizabeth.
seeing you.
Okay. The next is the lovely. By the way, I forgot to ask if there was anybody from the public who wishes to comment. So, anybody from the public wishes to comment? I'm sorry about
I
that.
didn't even
We
notice
just-
that you forgot.
I did, and then Roberto started talking, and then I forgot.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mike.
Michael Shank, Centennial Crossing. Whatever you guys decide to do, it would be probably be a good idea if, like I've seen when other school districts have done referendums on a website, they could put their valuation in and they input their deductions, homestead, whatever their deductions are, and it'll spit out what their impact will be. And based on the last presentation, I think maybe it'd be a good idea to have something like that where if we don't do anything, your taxes will go up, even though we're not doing anything. If you stretch it out, your taxes may go down. What's your annual impact? Because if people see that and they see, okay, for now, if it's getting stretched out and my taxes are going down and I'm getting renovations to 6 buildings in a new building, that might be a little more enticing to get to the polls and vote yes. So, just my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you write an app for us?
What's that?
Can you write the app for us?
Sure.
I was gonna say, how much does that cost?
In all honesty, I mean,
Should be a
you know,
simple
I'm always
calculator.
available
Elizabeth
to help if
Elizabeth has one. She's
She's got it.
you know they're out there, but
they're
you
out
know,
there.
you guys know where I live.
We have you
Just
and
don't
Elizabeth.
tell the mayor. Just kidding. He's all on our side. They're all on our side.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody else? Sandra?
Not today.
Not today. She raised her hand. Okay. The next is the policy press 98.
Oh.
Okay, it's quick this time.
Let's go
It's
fast.
it's really, really quick. The only one from the last time which we needed to kind of check on and confirm before I tell Joe Prokowski to kind of take a look into it and draft it for us so that Dr. Porto and Dr. Friedman can take a look at it is the 6:135, which was plan and recommendation for the this was for the accelerated placement program for the early entrance to kindergarten and first grade. We already do early entrance to first grade. We also do a grade level acceleration as well as subject-wise acceleration. We already have all those in places. Renee, correct me if I'm wrong somewhere, okay? I know you take care of all those, so just correct me if I miss. So we already do all that. We have these procedures in place. We just need to put them back in our policy. One of the questions that we had was, do we want to add early entrance to kindergarten? This means that the kindergartner could be 4, and we have redshirting too, so there would be a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. But we would have to do a lot of procedures, and not only in the procedures, we would have to get a lot of nonverbal tests for the 4-year-olds and stuff. Since we are already lacking in space and all that, this is something we can wait on. We don't have to do it. So we can wait on this policy, just keep our policy to our early entrance to first grade, which we already do, the grade level acceleration as well as subject acceleration, and come and revisit this later after we have a brand new kindergarten building and we have more time to look into what other tests and assessments, and because there's a whole bunch of things that you have to do. We can't just go based on, parent feedback that because we would have to have all that in place. But I wanted to know if this is something what board as a consensus wanted, because then I would have to give the direction to Joe to draft that policy. The rest of them would already go in. The only thing in question is the kindergarten, early placement into kindergarten. Or do we want to wait on it?
So, awkward, weird question, but well, if we would approve something like that, who pays for the testing? Because our
We do.
teachers, we can't charge the parents who want their children tested?
Renee, help me.
You can.
You can. It's part of the fee. You can add anything to a fee.
It would be your decision as a board.
And we currently do request payment for those individuals that are asking for consideration for first grade.
First grade, right? I think we asked them to pay $250, 200 to 250, something like that. Yeah.
And that
We don't charge anything for our already, like if kids who are truly gifted, if we want to accelerate them into subject matter
Right,
or
but I just
grade.
was curious who picked up the cost for all those testing, because, you know, people don't do things for free. Our teachers aren't coming in to test these kids for free. So does that $200 typically cover the costs?
Not really.
Okay. I'm just.
She's right.
Renee,
I-
are there a lot of parents that request early entry into kindergarten?
It depends on the year.
Okay.
Thanks, Renee.
Yes.
Fortunately, this year we had 3 requests. We've had 8 to 10 requests more often. This year we've only had 3.
This is for kindergarten or first grade?
This is for early entrance to first grade.
First grade.
So kindergarten eligible, but wanting to go to first grade. But we do get phone calls. It's not unusual to get a phone call or 2 throughout the year that I have a 3-year-old that I'd like to enter into kindergarten, early entrance into kindergarten. 4-year-olds. It's not that uncommon. It does help for us to have a policy to indicate that we don't consider early
No,
entrance
definitely,
to
because
kindergarten.
right now, yeah, I mean, it is not, and it's a new press policy, so I wanted to make sure what is ours. And it's not that if we don't add it right now, because even if we do think it will take a whole year to get the procedures and everything into effect anyway. But since we are already short on space in on all our schools, we could wait a year to see, or 2 years, and see if we want to revisit it, because I'm sure it has a lot of things involved with it.
I say keep it as we have it and put it on
Yeah,
hold.
we keep it. Right now, it's mostly all administrative procedure, but we will make it into a policy, because that's what they want us to do, to keep it what our administrative procedures have been and make it into a policy. Because right now it's all administrative procedures. They haven't asked us to make into policy, but what our administrative procedures are, we'll just formalize them. And we won't touch the kindergarten for right now. But I want to know what the consensus is, because I need to give directive to draft that policy.
I'm going to tap into my background in child development here and say that regardless of the cost and regardless of the space, I am not a fan of that idea. Everybody, and this is no offense because I've been a first-time mom too, everybody thinks their kid is gifted at that age. Sorry, but they do. I'm exaggerating. It's obviously not everybody, but I think that the asks would be large, and I think that having them wait 1 more year and they can do the ask in first grade if they're still thinking their child is so accelerated wouldn't change their outcomes ultimately in the long run. So to have them socially be a 3 or 4-year-old potentially looking at kindergarten, especially when nowadays there's a lot of 6-year-olds at the start of kindergarten who are turning 7 at some point that year, it's a big difference. Just my 2 cents, in case I should find myself no longer on the board by the time that decision rolls around.
No, I agree with you, because I completely agree that since we have the accelerated first grade policy, it doesn't really hold anything back from a child. Plus the amount of nonverbal and other cognitive testing that we would have to do for the 4-year-old, because all this would now have to be formalized into assessment and not just take a teacher's word or the preschool teacher's word, because it is a lot of work and effort and everything to be put into that. And I don't think we are holding or doing any disservice to any child. We will be accelerating, they could come into first grade, and we have procedures and stuff for that already. So
Just agree with the rest of you.
Ditto.
Okay. So we're in consensus, so we'll keep the policy that. I'll let Joe know. He'll talk to you.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Renee. So that was the one from last time that we needed to visit, so that is there. The press packet for this time is short, or rather more than short. It's not a lot of going into. One of the things is 3:40E. It's a checklist for superintendent employment contract negotiation process. So this will be something that we should all look into, would be helpful to look into. It's a huge checklist. 4:80, it's an administrative procedure 1. This is also checklist for internal controls. This is that it just tells you that the district implements a fraud, waste, and abuse awareness program to protect district assets. It's a reconciliation of checking accounts and credit cards is done by an individual who doesn't have check writing authority. Those were the two things that they wanted to make sure. The next is 4:80, administrative procedure 2. This is again the fraud, waste, and abuse awareness program. It tells us to make sure that the employee reporting procedures for suspected fraud, waste, or abuse, and it gives us the definition of what a fraud, waste, and abuse is. There's a whole laundry list. The accelerated placement program, that's an attorney thing. 7:310 administrative procedure. This is guidelines for student distribution of non-school sponsored publications in elementary schools. It tells you what the guidelines are and what they can distribute and not. One of the most in-depth in this administrative procedure was definition of sexting and what constitutes as sexting. 7:315 administrative procedure. This is guidelines for student distribution of non-school sponsored publication in high school, so we don't have to worry about that. 7:340 AP1. This is school student records amended in response to the Illinois Administration Code. This is when, when the parent or the guardian wanted the college entrance exam scores to be on the transcript. This is more to relate to high school, but we do have some middle schoolers who do take those tests, so in case if they wanted them on school records. 7:340 AP1 Exhibit 1. This is notice to parents of their rights concerning the student school records, of what they can and cannot expect and who can get them. So that's it. That's it for press packet 98.
Sweet. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonali.
And after doing all this, Abe told me I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to.
It's a good thing we don't pay for your time, Sonali.
Abe just told me I didn't have to do the reading of all this. I'm like, really?
It's not the same practice in all districts.
No.
It's different everywhere.
No.
Now he does.
But it's quite all right.
We'll talk.
We have to change a policy for you, Sonali.
I know. Now they tell me.
It's hilarious. You've had some of the biggest press packets in history of press packets.
They're like, why do you do that? And I'm like, I don't know.
All right. Anyway.
So the next is the discussion items. Let's go with the one which we already had, the BoardDocs Lite software system. Is there anybody who wants to discuss anything more than what Kristen presented, or any more questions, anything else to that?
I think it's a great direction to go in.
Okay. Any more questions? Because it's an action item for later.
Does Wendy like it?
Did you read the memo?
I did read the memo. She's changed her mind.
Just one question. Is that an annual thing? The cost is, but is the contract for a year at a time? In other words, we can get out of it every year if we choose to. Or are we locked in for 3, 5, however long?
I have no idea.
It would be annual renewals.
Okay.
We transitioned to BoardDocs, the light version in my previous district, and it was well received. We liked it a lot.
Okay, but for the first year, we could make just a 1-year commitment and then see, like
Correct.
if we
It's
liked
an
it.
annual renewal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for setting up the presentation. I found that helpful, and I really like the search feature. I think that's helpful. I've spent a lot of time going back through agendas and minutes to
And
find
trying to-
information.
yes.
Yep.
So that feature is worth its weight in gold.
Ditto clique.
The two women who have been the secretary trying to write everything out.
Well, it's also just trying to reconcile some of the emails with the board packets, but it's like so much easier if it's just in one spot.
The next item is the 10-year health life safety survey. This was a discussion that we had last time. We had DLR presented. This is something we are due for ISB. I think we are a bit late, but we have, and these are all in the A category. So we have to do them. That cost was approximately $140,000 for doing it. But we do need the ISB. We do need to have our approval so that we can, they can submit it to ISB. So this is a 10-year life safety. None of that part of that $140,000 was part of our ongoing summer projects, right? I'm just recapping from last time's meeting.
That's correct.
That's correct,
Yes.
right? Any questions regarding that? Because that is an approval item or action item for later.
No, unfortunately.
No? Okay. Kindergarten building, construction value engineering. We value engineered the building from 14.7 to 14.3 the last time, all costs in. We've already expended $800,000 towards engineering, architectural and engineering fees. So now the value, the building is at 13.5. We still do not have any commitment from the village right now. I'm hoping by the next meeting we would have a commitment when the final referendum question goes out regarding the road as yet, but we had sent them a letter to see what kind of commitment they would give us, and we are waiting on that. But right now, as the building itself on the referendum, it goes in at 13.5.
Do you want to thank the Park District for
Yes,
their
I
commitment?
definitely do want to thank the Park District for, they said they would commit up to $250,000 towards playground equipment. So we are really, really thankful to the Park District for helping us. They have been wonderful partners in the whole process with the kindergarten building for allowing us for the land and access to them and moving the gym so that we could have access to it with the security and stuff. So thank you so much, the Warren Hills Park District. The next discussion item is the EFMP plan refinement. We had the plans last time. We had the line-by-line item for what the plan was, what the cost was. We came down to 3 options from that, which was an all-in, then everything without the libraries, and then the next one was STEM only in middle school. Those were the amounts. Is the slide number 5, which we had?
Page 5.
Page 5, sorry. And discussions on that. So what is it? And now you have the options from Elizabeth for each option. What is the thinking? Because we can make, we wanted to make a decision by next meeting so that we can start moving forward with our referendum and getting the information out to the community and everything else. And get some boards and stuff ready by DLR so that they can tell us where, to show everybody better what each thing contains or everything is. Any questions?
Did you want thoughts or questions?
Thoughts, questions, discussion, everything.
I don't really want to lead off on this, but in the interest of not wasting time here. I will preface this by saying, regardless of what is decided, I will 100% support whatever we decide as a board, and I will cheerlead, wear a sandwich board, and do whatever I have to. But if I'm thinking about some of the feedback from the community, and I'm thinking about the ever-increasing taxes, and what I really think will happen to some operating expenses from certain spaces being built. My inclination is to go with option 3,
which is
the updated adopted EFMP with STEM in the middle schools only and not doing the libraries over. I can give reasons, but without belaboring the point, that would be my initial inclination. So I'd be curious to hear where other people are standing right now and what their thoughts are, because I can probably be swayed one way or the other with a reasonable argument.
When I heard the description of the libraries, to me, it's just sounded like another STEM space. And so, I mean, that for sure to me was kind of, we need to get the price down. So that was kind of an X for me right away.
So there are 2 options without the library. So which one would you go for?
Based on the numbers, I think a lower number will increase our odds of passing something. So I'm with Robin on 3.
So that's STEM and middle, no library?
Yep.
Okay. Who was Matt, Wes, Jason?
When looking at the options, I agree. We need to do our best to try to get this number down. We need to look at, all options where we can cut and present to the community. But if we're, I don't know if we're leaning towards the A option or the B option. I went with the B option. The all-in
for financing.
For financing, yes. Thank you.
Okay.
It ends up being about, for the $350,000 home market value, $31.25 a month.
For which one?
For the all-in.
For the all-in.
Yes.
Okay.
And then for the no libraries, which would be option 1B, that's $28.75 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And option 3B is $26.42.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it ends up being between $5 and $6 a month savings between the all-in versus the lesser of 2 options.
With the least of the options,
yes.
Right? Yeah.
So I guess I need to look at the actual operating or the estimated operating expenses of these extra spaces and look at the cost impact that way. Because for me, if our students are really going to get a huge educational benefit for $5 a month, I think the argument could be made, assuming that we do an excellent job of educating the community of the benefits for that extra $5 a month.
Abe, when you did the 1.3 million as an operating cost, this was for an all-in facility, right? Kind of, approximately.
This was for the middle option. That's what we had at the time.
The all-in.
Not the all-in, but
no libraries, everything in.
Correct, everything, no libraries.
But the libraries already are in there, so we're already operating the libraries as an operational cost.
Right, but if we change their function a little bit, it could, depending on how we staff that and make use of that space. And that wasn't really where my concern came from with the operating expense. It was more of the STEM space, not just in people, but materials and supplies and curriculum. I think there's, at the elementary level, at least, a lot of ways we can incorporate STEM into several of the lessons as it exists now. And, I've heard a lot of people try to compare us to Lake Forest and this and that. That's nice, but we're not Lake Forest and we're not Lincolnshire. And I think the idea that at the elementary level there's some kind of competition in public schools, I don't personally buy into all that well. But I do think there's some value at the middle school level where people really start thinking about how they're going to design their high school their approach to high school and those courses and stuff like that. Get their minds jogging a little bit and inspire them. And let me be clear, like, I'm not really looking at it as, let me take the lowest number possible because I think it'll have the best chance of passing. Because I think really, at least I would hope, people are more concerned with what's the right plan versus what's the less expensive plan. But I think that we do need to be cognizant of what will this cost us going forward and what's going to really be worth it in the long run. So that's where I'm coming from.
So here's my question, I guess, then, to everybody. So I'm looking at this timeline that we have, and it seems like a very similar timeline to how things went last time. How is our education piece and plan going to be different? Like, I mean, I don't have any ideas, so I'm not offering any.
You
but
mean for the referendum?
Mm-hmm. Because something has to be different if we're going to expect a different outcome. And I haven't really, unless I miss something, I don't really hear a plan. Because we keep talking about, well, if we educate people, then they'll pass it. Well, how are we doing that?
Of course.
Well, what's different is you now have me on board.
Yay!
And I'm 4-0 and passing a referendum. And I know a thing or two about it. Elizabeth knows my district was the only district in the entire state of Illinois that passed a referendum in the deepest, darkest depths of the recession, April 2009. And we won with 60% of the vote. So I was very proud of that. After that happened, I was contacted by districts all around the state. How did you do that? How did you do that? We were contacted so much that we put together a presentation and we presented it for 2 or 3 consecutive years at the AAA, what is it?
AAA
conference. So I have some good information, and I was just talking to Sonali today and wondering if I could present that very workshop that I did, here at a board meeting.
We would love
to
it.
let
Yeah.
you see what a successful education program, as you called it, or referendum campaign can look like. And it's got some ideas for both what the district can do and if there's a committee of, community members, how their role is different. And I'd love to lay that out and get the discussion started as soon as you're ready to do that. But yeah, something has to be different in the way that you approach it. And there's certain things that we know work really well and other things that don't have a cost benefit as far as the time you put in and the impact that you're going to have. So I'm eager to do that. Not ready to do that tonight, nor would it be appropriate. But as soon as you've made the decision, I'm eager to start helping and working with you on that.
And I am happy to hear that.
Matt?
Did Jason go?
No, you.
Jeff.
Or Jeff. Still looking at numbers.
It's I think I look at it similar to many of you guys as a value proposition of, when you broke it down to $26.42 a month for option 3 versus $31.25 for option 2. Yes, it's $4.82 difference. What do you get for that? You get STEM everywhere, worth library. Is it worth it? I don't know how to answer that question of whether it's worth it, because every homeowner is going to be different in terms of, is that worth it to me or not? I look at where could I, as a homeowner, spend that $4 a month? Well, I could use it as part of the $9.25 that might have to go to the operating fund, fund. So that cuts that down half. So that makes it, like Robin said, a little bit easier to sell. Yeah. In terms of a value, I don't know how to answer that. I just, it's like, is it easier to pass? Yeah, it's, if you look at numbers, it's 18% more than the lowest one versus the top one in terms of dollars per month. That's a lot of dollars percentage-wise. Absolute dollars-wise, yeah, it's Starbucks. big deal for some, not so much for others. But I think that's something that, we'd have to kind of somehow get a gauge as part of the education. I don't know how we can do that between now and making the decision of what's palatable. We keep hearing right plan versus spending too much. Well, how do we know what this is? I don't know. I'm asking more questions than I'm answering, but
that's okay. I feel like, not feel, it's not really a feeling, but the vast majority of what I'm hearing is still the perception that the things that are wants are the things like STEM, especially at the elementary level, and the needs are space. And so I think what's different between last referendum and this one is I think this time there's been a genuine understanding that there is that there are space constraints. And I think that wasn't necessarily universally believed last time for whatever reason, but so I think that's a big difference. So I don't think it's hard necessarily to, so to speak, sell people on the idea that we need more space. I think it has sold itself. I think hearing people use the word wants, or I know some people had used the word fluff, and there were mixed feelings about whether that was a nice word or not, but I still think that's a big perception out there, and not that we can't overcome that hurdle, but I think it's going to be a bigger one. And like I said, I personally think STEM at the elementary level can be done in a lot of different ways without making it a dedicated project type space.
Matt?
Kind of along the same lines of Robin and her thinking. I'm leaning towards the STEM in the middle, so the option 3B.
Okay.
And the libraries, I still want to look at the numbers a little bit more. And then that other referendum question kind of jumped out at me.
I guess that's my biggest concern.
I think if we go out with, I'm struggling with that right now.
Which one?
The operating expenses.
The operating one kind of has thrown me for a bit of a loop today because I thought I had it figured out. Now I'm a little flustered. Sorry.
Dr.
I'm not on painkillers.
Would you call it your Achilles heel? No, I'm just
kidding. Jeff?
So to build on what Robin and Jason said, I think our focus should be to make sure we alleviate the overcrowding issue. And to do that, it's really critical that we get a referendum passed. And I think when an individual voter goes to vote on something like this, they're looking at two things. One is, what is the overall cost? And there's a perception there. Are they getting a value for that total? And then how much is it going to cost them individually? And, for each person, what that means is different. $10 a month may be really significant to someone, and $100 a month may be insignificant to somebody else. But, I know we did a great job of educating the people that attended the community forums, and I think a lot of people have a better understanding, but that's still just a percentage of the voters that'll turn out. So, personally, I'm very supportive of the science programs that we have. I've for years wanted us to improve in that area. I don't know that spending the money at the elementary school level for STEM is something that we can sell with the overall projects that we want to do. So I'm leaning toward alleviating the overcrowding issue, addressing STEM at the middle school, and not including the media or library option.
Dr.
Judy, you had a question?
Typically, how long does it take to put on like an educational program and to have a successful referendum?
Let's see. The ones I've run were normally in the spring, and you do some voter registration things pretty early. But the main campaign would usually start in about January. So I'd say 3 months.
So knowing what we know, it looks like most of us are leaning towards STEM in middle schools, no library, going with the 48.7 number based on what Abe indicated on his preference and his reasoning behind it. He preferred the B option, which was flattening it out. We still have Elizabeth has been kind enough to stay. So if fiscally, A or B, which one do you think as a voter or as a homeowner that would be what would your recommendation and expert opinion be? I know you gave us all the options, but in your expert and
it's hard to answer that, Sonali, but I think just based on your situation, I think last time there was probably a lot of reasons it didn't pass, a lot of feedback. Just having gone to your community engagements is some of the higher taxes here and the fact that the current debt is increasing seemed to come up as an issue time and time again. So even though the B plan costs more interest over time, I think that it might be more appealing to your voters at this time.
I agree with her.
you
Dr.
agree with
Porter,
her,
you
Doc?
agree?
I agree with Elizabeth on this.
Okay, Jason, you were saying something?
Yeah, I'm definitely for 3B. I think one of the educational selling point of B is that we can say that the debt service tax rate will not increase at all over the life of this compared to what the debt service tax rate is for 2018.
Right now.
So,
actually go down the next
yeah, so it's what numbers do you want to look at? So that's a positive number that we can sell. Your tax rate will not go up with this. Then the question is, well, then how you get money for free? Well, it's because you're paying it for over a longer period of time. But it's just a positive thing that you can clamp
It'll
onto.
be one of your main talking
Yeah,
points.
it's your main talking
It will
point.
definitely.
Okay, so looks like, thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
So looks like at least we seem to be on a consensus for 3B, which is STEM in middle schools, no libraries. Option B, flattening it out over time.
We'll still have libraries, just no library additions.
No library additions. No, we have libraries.
We're not getting rid of the libraries.
No, we have libraries.
That sounded like your comment.
So
If we can't
Jason and I have
have
been
STEM,
spending
we're
enough
not
time
having
together. We're starting to
libraries.
sound alike.
No, I was like, that's like something Robin would say.
So we have libraries, we have stuff, we have books to kids to go to. So
Cook
So
Memorial's
at
about to
least
get real
that
busy.
is one thing we've decided. There were two questions that, as an example, Abe had sent in the board packet, which was one was more generic as a resolution, question. One was more in depth, which kind of gave particulars of where the funding would be used. So we can go over them next time, and we can have an action item on that next time, or the one after that.
So
No, you can run it next.
It'd be nice
Next.
to have questions at the same time, because right now it's framed as just blanks. We could put in that dollar amount
Yeah.
at the
Right.
next meeting.
Yeah.
If everyone can make a decision on the question, I think it would help our overall effort with
Okay.
the timeline that we have.
Okay.
Can the question be made, if you're looking at, let's say, option 2 about the building bonds, would we be able to stay like STEM at the middle school? Would it be able to get that specific, or we can't?
We can,
Go
right?
that
I
way.
think I remember
Elizabeth's
for
nodding too. Yeah.
because I think
Yes.
You
remember
can
last,
be more specific. It's a trade-off. So the more
Right.
specific you are,
Right, then you can only pull
the
bonds for
more-
that.
The less
Right,
flexibility
yeah, no,
you
I get
have.
it. I just think
Right.
for the people that come to the voting booth without knowing a darn thing, which will be some of them.
It's a delicate balance.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
so we can have it written down that way. We can
But then it
talk about it.
Sticks us into a spot.
Yeah, but we can
Right.
talk about it and make sure we can have it as an action item next time.
Perfect.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. We'll have a quorum next time. 5 of you.
I'll be here.
Okay. I just want to make sure we have a working quorum. Jeff can join by phone. I won't be able to, but I want to make sure we have a quorum. If you're going to
Jason's
put
running that
something
meeting,
as
right?
important as
Okay, good.
Not unless you want to.
No, thank you.
he's running it.
I'm like President
So-
pro tempore here. I'm like really far down the line.
Yeah, and about the second question, the limiting tax rate. Did you give the question? Was it there in the board packet?
It was also included
Okay,
in the
great.
packet.
Yeah, we saw
Okay,
it.
yeah, are we gonna discuss that a little bit or no?
Yeah, we can. We can start with discussing that so that we'll have it all ready for next time too.
I'm gonna let other people start. I've said a lot tonight.
Ditto.
Jason?
The only question I have is if the 48 million passes, but the smaller one does not, we still build the buildings and then try to fit our budget
Yes,
and
that's
live with
why the
what we
cash
have,
reserve
right?
was,
Find cost savings.
and find ways to do it, right? So
Yeah. and
it's-
that's why we held on to our cash reserves in that, for that contingency too, along with the escalation of prices during the build itself as well as the operating of it. But we will have to cut somewhere else to meet those costs too, because we're already on deficit.
Question for Joe, in your experience of passing referendum, were they all building referendums or working cash, both? Because there seems like
both.
different type of cells here.
The easier referendum to sell are building
Yep.
referendums because people can see
Yep.
the need and they can see the solution. Whenever you get into, raising the rate, it's more nebulous, it's harder for people. But in this case, the way that Abe laid that out, and it's based on the extra square footage, and we're not talking about raises for anybody, salaries, it's, merely utilities and so on, that would be much easier than an overall ed rate referendum. But yeah, by far the building ones tend to be easier.
Matt?
I didn't have any.
Have you done both at the same time?
Yeah.
I've never done both at the same time.
I wonder what combining them does to the electorate.
It makes me nervous.
Have you done?
You cannot combine the two. They have to be
I know.
separate
Right.
questions.
He
But
means
like
separate
on the
questions,
same-
but
means
we're
both
Separate
at the same
questions
time.
at
at the same time.
Yeah,
We're trying to
Elizabeth,
sell it at
it's
the
a
same
vast
time.
experience.
Yeah, I'd like to hear
I've
from
seen
Elizabeth.
them both, it all gets to the need. And
Right.
I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know, but you have to convince the voters of the need of both. I've seen 2 questions pass often, Oak Park most recently, a very large rate increase and a large bond issue as well. So it's simple education, and I say simple, but I know it's more complicated than that. It just is a matter of getting the message through to both. With a limiting rate, I think the tendency might be to say, not give that as much emphasis, but I think if you really spell out exactly what those funds are needed for the additional space, I think you'll have a much better chance at getting both.
If I could add to that, one time we did a building only and it passed, but by a closer margin than we thought. And some of the feedback that we got was some people were wondering, how are we going to pay for the extra
Operation.
space? Why didn't, where's that money coming from? So you really could be, you've got a very educated community and they might be asking that question anyway, but it does make sense. It's easy to sell the two together because they're so related.
How often do you hear people say, though, you shouldn't be building more space if you can't afford to run it? I mean, where does that come in? Because I feel like we're hearing that a lot with the negative feedback we got about adding onto the Sullivan Center. A big portion of it was, that's nice, but where are the operating expenses coming from? So I would worry about that. I would worry about if somebody wants to feel supportive of the district, I'd worry about them, but like not have a massive impact to them, to their own tax bill. I'd worry about them approving the 1.3 and not the building one. And really what we need is space, because, and I sort of cringe saying that because like, I so want to go with Abe's recommendation. I mean, I hate when I feel myself like getting pulled against the expert opinion. And like I said, I'll support whatever the board wants to do, but that would make me very nervous that you might get people wanting to just say, okay, sure, I'll support the school, check a box for myself to not have a massive impact, and that's it.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm butting in on your comments, but, you know, I really think the key is being as open and transparent. And
Right.
like Joe said, if you're going for a building that now the operational expense is going to eat into class size or some of those other things, you have to be very clear about that, that if we don't ask the operational, then maybe X, Y, or Z is going to have to be pinched to find the money to pay for that space. Likewise, you know, with the school district enrollment and everything else, you have to be prepared to talk about, are we going to need an ed fund rate down in the future? And if so, you know, the projections have to be all buttoned up. You've got to have all these answers to all these questions. So I think you passing both questions is possible. It just requires very clear and transparent communication what that additional operating rate is going to be needed for and why you need it. And what
what's the trade-off?
What's the trade-off?
Right. Now, the vast majority of our voters are not people with kids in the district. So then you got to wonder, like, how much do they care about what the impact is as far as programming goes, or class size, or whatever we decide to impact, right?
Well, you have to talk about home values.
Right.
And when they're ready to sell their house to a young family who's looking at the school district side by side and wondering why I should move to Vernon Hills rather than Lincolnshire.
Right.
That's how you sell it to people who don't have kids in the schools. And people do respond to that because it's very true, and they do understand that.
Okay. Well, I would kind of follow what your gut instinct is on that $1.3 million ask. I know you haven't asked for both at the same time, but since you have a lot of experience passing referendum, I guess I would.
I lean with Elizabeth. I would go for both. They're the two things that you need. They go hand in hand. It's being totally transparent. If you don't do that, then you're pinching your budget in other areas to find the 1.3, and let the community decide. Tell them what you need and let them decide. They'll tell you.
Okay.
Wes?
I think that we've done a really good job of laying the groundwork as far as, you know, preparing a plan that meets our needs. But I don't think that we, as a district, have done a good job of, you know, cutting costs. But I have to thank Abe, because I know Abe is really going through now and looking where we have room to save money and cut costs. And I think that maybe each meeting we need to have a discussion on, you know, what we're cutting, so that, you know, we're showing that we're being fiscally responsible. Because I think the community is more likely to support us if we're showing that we're tightening up our expenses, you know, anything that's not impacting student outcome. And I know that, you know, like I said, Abe is doing a really good job, and I think we need to be, you know, sharing that with the community of what we're doing on our end too. Because we're just not saying, oh, well, we need money for this and this, and we're going to build this. We're, you know, like I said, trying to be really fiscally responsible. And, you know, we have a lot on the line. We can't fail, because if this doesn't pass, we lose the kindergarten center. You know, so, And the only way this plan really works is if we have the kindergarten center. So we need to do everything in our power to educate, to get the word out, and to really sell this to the community. And that's why, having 2 referendum questions really makes me nervous. But at the same time, I know that it's necessary.
Jeff? Jeff?
I agree with what Wes said, a lot of what she said.
Okay. So most of us agree that even though it's not the most ideal situation, we do need to have 2 questions because it shows the need and it shows where we have to go. So at the next meeting, let's have both the questions in there and we will have more discussion and vote on that to
That was
get.
hard. Good job.
Thank you.
And going forward, we've made some tier 1 cuts. Maybe we can talk about them at the next meeting a little bit more on that and start exploring our tier 2 cuts that we are going to go for.
So the
Wes, your
actual,
points about cutting a budget while in conjunction just are so well stated. One of the reasons that I think the districts I spoke of had success is that we used to call it the low-lying fruit, but the places where you can cut that don't get into the classroom but can still be made, it goes a long way during your campaign to be able to talk about that. So I just wanted to thank you for bringing that up. I just think it was spot on.
Well, I met with Abe last week, with Robin, and I'm, like I said, Abe's doing a great job. Thank you, Abe. Thank you.
I haven't looked at the budget yet, but Abe is,
I really
we'll
think we
take
should
a look
be,
through it.
communicating that more to.
It could be a key part of the whole educational campaign.
You were saying something?
yes, as far as the actual wording of the question, we're going to approve that at the next meeting. Is that correct or not?
Yes, right?
It would be ideal
best
for the
if
sake
we
of our
could.
timeline.
Okay.
Yeah.
So between now and then, how do we get our input? Like Robin said, can we add this in there? Can we do this? We can't talk about the wording outside of this as a group.
Right.
So does Abe or Joe be the point in determining here's the wording of the ask of the question, and then we just individually provide
Where
feedback
are
to
we
Joe
at with
and
the wording? Have you seen?
The wording was in the.
There's a
Was
draft.
a rough
Correct.
draft.
We provided 2 draft questions.
Yep.
Okay.
One's generic and one's more specific.
Yep.
So the question is, do we prefer specific or generic? Or somewhere in the middle?
and how do we get to that
Elizabeth,
point?
did you help with the
Just
wording
a
of
few
the?
comments on that.
Yeah, because
Bond counsel writes the form of the question.
Right.
For the facilities, it has to be factual. Most of the time, we lean away from getting very specific just in case you get into the ground and something you planned on doing isn't working
Right.
because of soil borings, or you have to amend the plan. Because anything you say in the question, you have to do. So keep that in mind. So, like somebody mentioned, if you're going for option 3 with the STEM in the middle schools, that's an important fact that may need to be in there. But just know that must be done then, which I think you intend to do anyway. So, mostly we like the less specific, but maybe you can put some certain things that are tailored to the question that you're asking to distinguish it from your others, like in option 3. So, I mean, you can change the question at your meeting on July 23rd.
23rd.
I mean, you can do that in the meeting, but I would suggest, more discussion on it now, or send your ideas to Joe and Abe, and they can ask bond counsel, and we can
I like that idea.
take,
Okay.
all those comments into consideration, giving you some more options to look at then on the 23rd. With regard to the rate question, you have no option except for the statutory required language.
Oh.
So there's.
But if you give us ideas and such, we can try some drafts, get them back to you, and maybe at the meeting we have a couple of options and we can have the discussion there and decide.
Okay.
The one big difference is STEM. I mean, so that could be the question to you. Do you want the word STEM in the question or not? STEM at the middle schools.
Guess it depends on how it's worded in the question. So
I think I'd have to
So that's
sleep on
option
that.
two.
I'd have to look at it and read the whole thing and see, does this make sense? Is it meaningful?
Elizabeth, in your experience, is the wording really crucial, and is the more generic better than the more specific as far as results?
Hard to say with regard to results, but I think one of the key things is your communication plan. Can you get your communication plan between July 23rd and the November vote out so enough people understand that STEM is just in the middle school? So you got to remember, not all voters are going to go on your website or go to a community information system. So that, that nuance may be important to have in the question, is my initial thought. But generic is certainly more open-ended in that you're not tied into, you're not tying your hands in any way, and you can communicate what you're doing through the campaign. So I think STEM in the middle school, just my thought about it, is unique because you're not doing it district-wide. You don't want people to get the wrong idea.
Right.
Would I'm thinking marketing, so when you say education, so, if we give this plan, the final 3B, we're not going to call it 3B, from a marketing perspective, from an education perspective. If we come up with, Hawthorne's super awesome plan, would that be beneficial to have in questions? Because as part of our education, we'll be repeating that over and over again, Hawthorne's super awesome plan, whatever it is, and then have that in the question so that there's a connection between our education and the question.
Typically, you can't name the plan in the question.
Right.
And the reason is because bond counsel would see that as persuasive.
Electioneering.
Completely factual.
Can't do that from the board level.
I just hope that name doesn't stick. Really.
We'll come up with a better one.
What's wrong with super awesome?
We could have a super awesome mascot.
Personally, I would just advise to not belabor the question, the wording.
Sell the question.
I've seen boards just labor over the wording, and you know what? It comes down to vote yes or vote no.
Yeah. Sell the question.
I will likely be
Right.
deferring to the experts on the language.
Right.
Okay.
Maybe
So if you have certain suggestions, send them to Dr. Porto and Abe, CC me, and we'll get something from the bond council so that we have at least a couple of options on there for the next time for you guys to vote on.
Elizabeth, can we clarify for the public one little bitty thing? I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. I think I am, but I want to make sure the public does too. When you said if we mention STEM at the middle school, we have to do it. We only have to do it if we pull the bonds.
Yeah.
So we still have the option to not pull the bonds.
That's exactly
Okay.
right. If it doesn't,
I just don't want people thinking
Yeah.
like,
No,
you
no,
guys said that we wouldn't have to pull these bonds necessarily. No. Okay.
Good
Okay.
point.
thank you.
So if we were, let's say, after the election, to find a corporate sponsor who wants to sponsor our STEM lab, we don't have to pull those bonds, correct? If we have somebody that's going to pay for the STEM center. It's
Right.
hypothetical.
Right.
Okay.
Are you going door to door soon?
The next, that's it for the discussion items. We have, so anybody, that's a conclusion of the committee of the whole. We have a business meeting. Anybody from the public wishes to comment? John?
I love when you put people on the spot.
Just like that. He wasn't paying attention to us.
Mike?
If Cuneo comes online in the next
2 years.
2 years,
Yeah.
the amount that we'd be getting from Cuneo, would that help cover the 1.3? And if it does, would that cease that increase? I forget what you call the 1.3 increase.
Limiting tax rate.
Limited, thank you. Could that cease to exist, to reduce, and then just pull? I know it's dependent a lot. It's probably contingent on how many children per household.
Right.
But if
Well,
it's
that
like,
would factor in on the expense side, but on the revenue side, we have included within our projections, new construction. And with that said, the way we're currently operating, we still had a projected deficit trajectory, notwithstanding this.
It was a good thought.
At one point, it was discussed that was going to fund the kindergarten center, the operating cost of the kindergarten. The Cunha was going to, right? But obviously, there are.
Yeah, it's easy to piecemeal elements here and there, but you really have to look at the entire budget holistically. So things like transportation costs going up, or our medical PPO renewal going up 8%.
Yeah.
All
What
of
was the
these
percentage?
things.
8% or 80?
7.8% for a PPO renewal. Along with increases, salary increases, right?
Yeah.
All of that costs money. And so it's easy to just take 1 million here, we'll pay for 1 million there, but that's not the case. You have to look at the entire budget holistically on the revenue side as well as the expense side. And we've laid that out. We've looked at the new construction, we've mapped it out within our 5-year projection, and we've included that.
Thanks, Mike.
Can we, I don't want to bring up a sore subject, but can somebody get clarification from the village about how close they are to agreeing to allow apartments to be built where Sears currently stands? Because it sounds like that's the developer's plan.
The last time we talked to them, they didn't indicate anything to us and in any aspect of it.
Okay.
So, but we will keep, we have continual meetings with them.
The newspaper article made it sound like, which of course, not all of them are 100% spot on, but the newspaper article made it sound like that was a plan that had already been put forth to the village in some very casual sense. I don't know if anything formal, but.
Trustee Cook also brought it up too. He was saying how,
it is a word cliff play or whatever the new concept, that's what they're calling it. But as far as the formal presentation from a developer to there's nothing, at least that's what nobody has mentioned it to us from in all the
Let's
meetings.
maybe just ask.
Yeah, we will, definitely.
That would require a zoning change, right?
Yes,
they're
but
talking possible hotels too.
I'm fine with a hotel,
Yeah,
obviously.
hotel's great.
But-
Cool, let's do a hotel. Done.
I'm not sure there's a set plan yet.
Next is the consent agenda. I'm going to pull the minutes from June 8th out. So the consent agenda includes closed session minutes from June 11th, closed session minutes from June 13th, closed session minutes from June 18th, board meeting minutes from June 25th, and closed session minutes from June 25th, personnel resignations and new hires. Any discussion?
Can you pull the closed session minutes from June 25th? Because although I watched.
Both of them?
Well, I mean, here's the question. So I didn't attend the board meeting on June 25th in person. I watched it online. So do I approve those minutes or do I abstain? But I definitely was not part of the closed session on June 25th, nor did I listen to the tape yet. So.
Just abstain.
Abstain from the whole consent agenda then? Okay.
I'll just pull them out and we'll do them separately.
I'm fine either way, but.
I'll pull them out and do separately. Do I have a motion?
I move the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items as amended.
I second.
Robin? No, who seconded?
I seconded.
So motion by Julie, seconded by Robin. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Jason Tron.
Aye.
Julie Simpson.
Aye.
Jeff Bard.
Aye.
Robin Cleek.
Aye.
West Pullen, aye. Matt Jacobs.
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. Do I have a motion for the minutes from June 25th?
I move that the Board of Education approve the board meeting minutes from 6/25/18 and the closed session minutes from 6/25/18.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Julie, seconded by Matt. Could I have a roll call, please?
Jason Tron,
Abstain.
Julie Simpson,
Aye.
Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Robin Cleek,
Abstain.
Wes Pullen, aye. Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 5 ayes, 2 abstentions. The next is the action item for the 10-year Health Life Safety Plan. Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the 10-year Health Life Safety Plan as presented.
I second.
Motion by Robin, seconded by Wes. Could I have a roll call, please?
Sonali Patel,
Aye.
Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye. Robin Cleek,
Aye.
Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Julie Simpson,
Aye.
Jason Tron.
Aye.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. Next is the BoardDocs Lite Board Agenda Software System. Any discussions?
Yeah, I just want to say, it sounds like a really great thing, and the cost in terms of our overall budget is not that significant. However, given the referendum and our ask of the taxpayers, I just don't want to spend money on the board itself. I'd rather that money go to our students and into the schools. So that's just my thought on it.
Thanks, Jeff.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
So actually, Jeff, I came into tonight thinking the same way as you. And I know I'm not sure what you could see, probably nothing of the actual presentation, but I think this is a good opportunity for not just the board, but it's a way for the community to interact with the board and demonstrate our transparency, and they get to see a lot of what we look at in making our decisions. So I did come in tonight going, I don't think I'm going to approve that, because why even spend, what is it, 7,000-ish? 4,000-ish, sorry, the other one was 7. Why even spend that? But I do think this is a good opportunity for not only to support Wendy, but I do think it's a good opportunity for us to interact with the community. That's just my 2 cents.
Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve BoardDocs LT Board Agenda Software System as presented.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Motion by Julie, seconded by Robin. Could I have a roll call, please?
Jason Tron,
Aye.
Julie Simpson,
Aye.
Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Robin Cleek,
Aye.
Wes Pullen, aye. Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. The next is a resolution declaring the intention to issue 1.5 million working cash fund bonds for the purpose of increasing the working cash fund of the district and directing that notice of such intention be published in a manner provided by law. Any discussion for this?
I have a question regarding this. So what is the difference between doing this? Let's say we have a fixed amount that we know we need for what we want to do. Let's just say 50 million or whatever. What's the difference between doing this and just asking for the same amount in the referendum in terms of impact to the taxpayer and overall cost for the district?
Because in here,
if we knew the referendum was going to pass.
Assuming the referendum was going to pass, your referendum amount would go up by 1.5 million because this is your reworking it. So I think that would be the difference. Elizabeth is nodding her head, so I'm right. But she's coming here to explain it a bit better.
So which is the better financial play for the district?
Doing the limited.
If we were sure the referendum was going to pass, would it be to get our money using this combination, or would it be to get all of our money through the referendum process?
It would be better to do it this way financially, because the 1.5 million in this option is paid off in 10 years. If you were to add it to the referendum, it would be paid off over 20 plus years. So it's more cost effective to do it through the limited bonds through your debt service extension base.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve a resolution declaring the intention to issue 1.5 million working cash fund bonds for the purpose of increasing the working cash fund of the district and directing that notice of such intention be published in the manner provided by the law.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Julie, seconded by Jason. Could I have a roll call, please?
Sonali Patel,
Aye.
Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
West Pullen, aye. Robin Cleek,
Aye.
Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Julie Simpson,
Aye.
Jason Shaw.
Aye.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. President's report. Let Wendy know if you are going to attend the III conference. Also, it is July. We just started with the HEI today. And I do want to let people know that please be aware of the residency date events, as well as getting all your medical and health forms into our district offices or schools, because everybody rushes in the last day and our nurses and our staff is overwhelmed with everything. So if you can, please help them out. That is all the report I have for now. Topics for future meetings. Any topics? Any discussion?
In light of the upcoming referendum and just moving forward, do we want to potentially have a discussion about how we want to treat public comment during these board meetings? It seemed like the community responded really well to making comments if it was in a style where we could have a back and forth conversation, but I know in the past that hasn't been how we've chosen to do it during the open board meetings. There's pros and cons, of course, but do we want to even have the discussion? And if not,
the discussion between us.
We can have a discussion about it next time and see, have it as a topic of future discussion for how we want to teach.
Do we need consensus?
Does it need consensus?
I mean, I'm
Because that's
for it,
only
but-
2 of us.
To add it to the
Agenda.
Yeah, we'll just add it to the agenda as a topic for future discussion on how to handle public comment. Next meeting, I would, if Abe could present some of the tier 1 cuts that we've already started doing. I think that would be helpful to start off with, and maybe the following meeting we could start with the tier 2, which have been identified, and then we can start thinking about where we are going to go, kind of thing. So if you could, do you think that is something we
That's a
want?
start. I think that's
Yes.
great. Yes.
So let's start with the tier 1 cuts
Yes,
that
ma'am.
you and Mike are doing. And not the next meeting, because the next meeting we are actually trying to do all the resolutions and the working and the questions, but the meeting after that, if Dr. Porto could give us his presentation.
Yes, that
for
timeline for me would be good. Not
So,
next meeting, but the one
the
after.
meeting after that, so
Perfect.
the August
You'll
meeting.
have
we could,
already voted then. Okay.
yes, because we would have already decided our
Right.
thing, and then we could have you give the presentation and get started
Perfect.
on stuff.
Be happy to.
Great.
Anything else?
No thanks.
Okay. Next meeting, Jason is going to lead it. I'm out of town, so any questions, anything in the middle, please send them to Jason and Abe. CC me too, but just send them to him if they're regarding the meeting in particular. Definitely CC Abe and Dr. Porto and stuff. That's it. We are adjourned. We have a closed session, so
We're not.
we
We're
can
not
take-
adjourned yet.
No,
Huh?
we're not adjourned.
No, I'm telling them that
Oh.
they can leave because we have a closed session.
That.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we will have to.
The recording has been stopped.
I'll make a motion when we're ready.
Yes,
We need a motion.
Chairman, make a motion to go to closed session.
I move that we go into closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity. 5 ILCS 120/2C1 is amended by PA 93-0057, and to discuss collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes or employees. Is that supposed to be of employees? 5 ILCS 120/2C2.
Second.
Second. Motion by Robin, seconded by Matt.
Jason Schron,
Aye.
Julie Simpson,
Aye.
Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Robin Cleek,
Aye.
West Pole and I, Matt Jacobs,
Aye.
Sonali Patel.
Aye. Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays. We'll wait for people to leave and